शलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome to our Tuesday and Thursday series on Vaishnav Ninda. We have been especially discussing this second part of the series, especially from a modern perspective with respect to practical application and from a Shastric perspective. This part two, criticism is born out of envy, a definitive analysis. And then we have been still in this first theme itself. In the first theme itself, we have discussed now few classes. First, we did this criticism is born out of envy, a definitive analysis. We saw these terms like dislike, jealousy, and what is enviousness. Then we went through the statement of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur about criticism and the story, the famous pastime of the Dhaka story. And after understanding this practical lesson, then we went into the Shastric analysis, how criticism is the business of the mundane mind. And we saw these verses from 2.62 to 2.65. And we concluded that ultimately, if the senses are not controlled, the mind is not controlled, the intelligence is not pure, and the mundane mind takes pleasure in fault finding and criticizing. So a sadhaka has to strenuously control his mind and senses, purify the intelligence, and ultimately attain the mercy of the Lord. So we had an elaborate discussion on this in the last two classes. And then it is the intelligence which takes pleasure in finding faults. So we saw this criticism, the critical side. So we have the mind, which is the creative side, and the critical side. And we saw this verses Raga Dvesha Vimutaistu Vishayan Indriyascharan Atma Vashay Vidiyatma Prasadam Adhigachati. And we need to internalize the buddhi by hearing from Guru Sadhu Shastra and analyzing and experiencing. And we saw the difference between material intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana, these three stages. Also, we had quite an elaborate discussion. And when we attain the mercy, then the buddhi is fixed in the self, and then we are prasanna cheta. Then we are completely in a peaceful mind. The mind is completely peaceful. The peace of the heart, we saw. The peace of the mind and the peace of the heart, they are two different things. And prasanna cheto, we connected that to when avidya is destroyed, evam prasanna manasu bhagavat bhakti yogata bhagavat tattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. So this was the Shastric analysis we did. And another verse we took, that yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvanapina lipate. So how only when we have controlled our mind and senses, then the consciousness is pure and we are never offensive. So two Shastric analysis we did, 2.6 to 265 and then 5.7. So this is where we ended our discussion. Today is a very important theme and discussion. Part of criticism is born out of envy. That is constructive criticism, a Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective. This is going to be really interesting and it is a very important theme for us to understand. And today we will be discussing this theme. We might discuss this in 2 sessions because we'll go slowly, step by step, and try to understand. We saw that in the last 2 classes, based on the Shastric analysis and the lesson, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's story, that it is ultimately the material intelligence which is under the control of the mundane mind, which takes pleasure in criticizing. But those who are also great souls do criticize, but this criticism is not born out of envy. And this type of criticism is called as constructive criticism. So today we will be doing a Shastric analysis of constructive criticism. But just to begin, because we are going to do some analysis, let us try to see some pastime and try to understand this, and then we'll go into the analysis. We all know that Srila Prabhupada was building the Juhu temple project, and what a fight he had with Mr. M to get the land for Radha Ras Bihari. Ultimately, ISKCON got the land, and then the construction project had started. Prabhupada wanted the construction to go on at a war footing level. At last, he decided to hire a company to do the construction project. So one of the company managing directors came to meet Prabhupada. And this I heard from him itself, because he in his 40th anniversary of Juhu temple spoke in glorification of Prabhupada. So I personally heard this. So I am a proof for it. So definitely it is not a hearsay from some other source. I personally heard his offering to Srila Prabhupada, what he gave in that Juhu program. I was present there. So he was saying that when he first came and met Prabhupada, he gave his card, I am the managing director of this company. And then Prabhupada spoke to him, so how is your day? Because he's a businessman. So Prabhupada spoke in a business language. How is the day? Oh, morning I get up this time, then go to office, then this is my schedule. That. So what about spirituality? Prabhupada said. He said, I don't have time for spirituality. Prabhupada said, you are an animal. And Prabhupada spoke these words because of genuine compassion. It was coming purely from that soul, which was having genuine compassion for this soul, the managing director of that company. And this person was explaining in his Vyas Puja offering that when he heard these words of Prabhupada, it struck his heart and it really melted him. And that ignited his spiritual inclination, and he later on became a devotee by Prabhupada's words, what he spoke. What did Prabhupada speak? You're an animal. Now, Prabhupada could do that because his heart was pure. His heart was purely filled with love, and there was no trace of these six enemies, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya. So he could speak. So it was spoken out of genuine compassion. Whereas somebody who is conditioned, when he speaks these very same words, then it will not affect the heart of the other person in a positive way, but it will hurt his ego, and then there can be ego clashes. So this is one of the famous pastimes which I have heard personally. So sadhus also do criticize, but this criticism is called as constructive criticism. This can be twofold. It has a twofold effect. One is this criticism directly targeted to the conditioned souls can affect their heart in a positive way so that they can be awakened to spiritual life. Second can be such kind of a criticism can be done in order for protection of the disciples. So Srila Prabhupada in his morning walks, especially with Dr. T.D. Singh, we know that this book is Their Life Comes from Life. So Prabhupada had a lot of conversations in this morning walk, which is now printed in the book, and exposed the scientist of the flaws and gave a Vedic perspective. Because Prabhupada wanted his disciples to be protected from the material science and have material faith. And he wanted them to have spiritual faith. So this Jada Vidya is also Mayara Vaibhav. And that is why Prabhupada wanted to protect them, and he spoke. And you open up that book, Life Comes from Life. Many times you'll see the statement, they are rascals. So this, what Prabhupada was speaking, was again constructive criticism. So having understood with these two pastimes of Prabhupada, let us now go into the analysis and understanding of what this constructive criticism is. I will be basically speaking this from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's one of his articles on these 6 faults: Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagra, Jana Sangascha Laulyam Cha, Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashati. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote articles on each of these faults. Atyahara, he wrote one article, Prayas one article, Prajalpa one article, Niyamagra one article. And this is now in the form of Sri Bhakti Aloka book, which is there. So many of the discussions today will be from this, this book of Bhaktivinoda Thakur of constructive criticism. Now this text too we all know. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janashangascha laulyam cha shadvir bhaktir vinashati. So we are going to see Bhaktivinoda Thakur's article on Prajalpa. So this definition of Prajalpa is very important to understand. Now the word Prajalpa has connotations. It can have a positive connotation or a negative connotation. So positive and negative connotations are implied meanings in certain context. They have some implied meanings. It can be either positive or negative. Like energy, energy has a meaning, but my energy is down. When I say, it is a negative way of expressing, oh, my energy levels are high today. So that is a positive connotation. So similarly, this prajalpa has a positive connotation and a negative connotation. Every word has these connotations. It can be positive or negative. And then there are the root meanings of the words. So root meaning is jalpan. Jalpan means to talk. Talking with one another is called as jalpan or prajalpan. Gupchup. In Hindi we say, kya gupchup kar rahe aap? So something like that. So jalpan is the Sanskrit word, or prajalpa. Prajalpa is being discussed. So this is the definition Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives. And then he says, what is the modern disease? Nowadays, in this world, godlessness is so prominent that conversing with others means godless talk. Therefore, it is not profitable for a practicing devotee to engage in jalpan. So talk means godless talk. So that is why devotees should not engage in jalpan at all, jalpan or prajalpa. Now further, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, there can, however, be many kinds of jalpan in the cultivation of devotional service. They are all auspicious for the devotees. So here Bhaktivinoda Thakur is speaking about positive connotation of jalpan. In the previous definition here, this was a definition, but here in this context, the jalpan was having a negative connotation. But now a positive connotation, that is, in jalpan is there in the cultivation of devotional service also, he says. And then he quotes Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami has written in his Karpanya Panjika Stotra, Athapyasmin kadachit vamadiso nama jalpini avadya vrindanistari nama bhaso prasidatam. Devotees recite the purport to this verse in the following words. So this verse, the purport is here. Tathapi e dina jane yadi nam uchcharane nama bhasa karila jivane sarva dosha nivarana duhun nama sanjalpa. So the word has come, jalpan. Here also it is a jalpini. Prasade prasida dui jana. So what is the meaning of this verse? And this is actually the explanation of this verse. What is it? While chanting the holy name of the Lord, Atapi asmin kadachit vamadishu nama jalpini. While chanting the holy name, if a Vresh person in his lifetime achieves namabhas, namabhaso prasidatam, or here it is mentioned, namabhas karila jivana. What happens? A glimpse of offenseless chanting, and all his faults are destroyed. Sarva dosha nivarana. Avadya vrinda nistari. Then what happens? And their lordships become pleased with him. Prasidatam. Prasade prasida dui jana jane. So jalpan means also kirtan. Talking with one another about godless things is jalpan. That is the negative connotation. So there is a positive connotation, that is taking Krishna's names. So there Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes on to say kirtan, offering prayers and reciting the scriptures are all jalpan. So here is a positive connotation to the meaning of jalpan. But when these are performed with a favorable mood and devoid of material desire, then they are all cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So jalpan is prohibited, but the positive jalpan in the form of kirtan, offering prayers, recitation, if they are performed, two aspects are here: favorable mood and no desire, material desire. Then this is good for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, The conclusion is this: all Prajalpas that are unfavorable to Krishna service are adverse to devotional service. So first I will be discussing the concept of Prajalpa, and then we will be coming into constructive criticism. Because in the last class we have discussed that it is the impure intelligence or the material intelligence which takes pleasure in finding faults. So this happens at the subtle level, and ultimately we speak the faults through our mouth. So that is why we are discussing Prajalpa, and that after discussing this Prajalpa, then we will come to constructive criticism. So the conclusion is not what all Prajalpas that are unfavorable to Krishna's service are adverse to devotional service. The practitioner should carefully give up Prajalpa. Now, after saying this, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions the activities of the Mahajans. There is no fault in the activities of Mahajans. The Mahajans have engaged in Prajalpa. They also engage in Prajalpa, favorable to devotional service, and this is our duty. So the Mahajans also engage in Prajalpa, and it is favorable to Krishna consciousness. So they have engaged like this. Sometimes some puffed up devotees advise that all types of Prajalpa should be given up. But we are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. Being followers of Rupa Goswami, we will always stick to the path shown by the sadhus who are following his instruction. So Rupa Goswami has not forbidden all types of prajalpas. There are some sadhus who just keep a maun vrat, not to speak only. So that will not help. So there is positive connotation, there is a positive speech, and that is recommended by Rupa Goswami because that is favorable for. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, as quoted from the Skanda Puran, it is said, Samriga Shreyasam Heta Hetu Panta Santapa Varjita Anavapta Shamam Purve Yena Santa Pratishtire. One should strictly follow the easy path given by the previous Mahajans have accepted, that the previous Mahajans have accepted. Sa Mriga Sreyasham Hetu Panta Santapa Varjita, the path given by the previous Mahajans. That path bestows great auspiciousness and is devoid of all misery. Anavapta Shamam Purve Yena Santa Pratishtita. Pratishtita means the set up by, and it is Santapa Varjita. It is free from miseries. So that is this path. It bestows auspiciousness and it is free from misery. So this is the reference Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving, that we should follow the path given by the Mahajans, and the Skanda Puran quotation is given. Our Mahajans are Srila Vyasdev, Sukadeva Goswami, Prahlad Maharaj, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. We are not to leave aside that path to follow the instructions of new puffed up devotees. All the Mahajans have respected that Prajalpa which nourishes devotion to Hari. We will discuss this in the appropriate place. So Prajalpa which nourishes devotion to Hari, that has to be accepted. Godless Prajalpas are impediments to devotional service. So what is to be given up is the godless Prajalpa. The Prajalpa which is the subject of God, which is favorable to devotional service, that has to be accepted. There are many types of useless talks. There are many types. Useless talks, arguments, gossip, debates, fault finding in others, speaking falsehoods, blaspheming devotees, and worldly talk are all called Prajalpa. So these are the godless Prajalpas. So here I have put in this chart, you can see there are these many types, at least 8 types Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning. So we will be concentrating, especially criticism is born out of envy, and the mind takes pleasure, or the intelligence takes pleasure in finding faults and takes mundane pleasure in such things. So fault finding is one we will be focusing, and Ninda, Vaishnav Ninda, blaspheming devotees. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives quite a little discussion on these 8 different types of prajalpas, and we will cover some of others also, but we will focus on these two, the 5th and the 7th one, the godless prajalpa. Now, in the Upadeshamrit, there is the verse given by Rupa Goswami, Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jivva Vegam, Udarapasta Vegam, Etan Veganyo Vishedhira, Sarvam Abhimam Prithvin Sashishyat. The control of speech, Vacho Vegam. So the negative speech is what? Prajalpa is godless talk. The positive is Krishna Katha. The neutral is silence. Controlling speech, however, does not mean self-informed silence, the external process of Mona, as Mayavadi philosophers think. Silence may appear helpful for some time, but ultimately it proves a failure. So Prabhupada mentions that this will also not be. So controlling speech means to speak positive Krishna Prata. So this is what is recommended, which is favorable for devotional service. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes to the first discussion, useless talk. Useless talk is extremely detrimental. Practicing devotees should discuss topics of Lord Hari in the association of other devotees and remember Hari's name, form, qualities, and pastimes in a secluded place without uselessly wasting time. So we should, talk only about Krishna when we meet in the association of devotees. And we should avoid this useless talk, which is very, very detrimental. He gives a reference in the Bhagavad Gita 10.8 and 10.9. Aham sarvasya prabhava matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam bhuda bhava samanvita matchitta matgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Everything emanates from me. Matta sarvam pravartate. So this is not a redundant statement. All the sadhanas also come from me. That is what Vishwanath Chakravarti says. The wise who know perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Iti matva bhajante ma bhuda bhava samanvita. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Matchitta matgata prana. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. Matgata prana. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another. Bodhayanta parasparam. Katashyanti nityam. Tushyanti cha ramanti. And conversing about me. So this is the translation. So this is what devotees are supposed to do. They should understand how Krishna is the source of this creation. Krishna is given in principle in the Gita and in the Bhagavatam, more elaborate, Sarga and Visarga is discussed. And the more we understand this, the more our Sambandha Gyan, the more we will be fixed in doing bhajan with our head and heart. And then Krishna is situated in our heart, Matchitta. It is an important principle. The person whom we love most, who is very dear to our heart, we speak about him. So this is that verse, Matchitta Matgata Prana. And that's why Bodhayanta Parasparam. Also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes this another verse, 9.14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridha vrata Namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, namasyante to mamadya. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Nitya yukta upasate. So these are the kinds of jalpan the devotees should always engage. And references 9.14 and 10.8 and 9. And avoid useless talk. Further, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, in this way, the practicing devotee should cultivate unalloyed devotional service or unalloyed devotion. If they spend their days and night uselessly talking with materialists, then the Lord's instruction, always chanting my glories, will not be followed. In newspapers, there is so much useless talk. So especially in today's world where the newspaper doesn't come to our home now, it is on our mobile and on the smartphone and or on the computer, and with the pop-up the whole news comes up. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is advising, especially this instruction or advice of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is more relevant today to us. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, in newspaper there is so much useless talk. For a practicing devotee to read newspaper is a great loss. But then he says, but if there are topics about pure devotees described in the newspaper, then that can be read. So we know during Prabhupada's time, the Hare Krishna movement as it was spreading, a lot of newspapers were carrying articles, and Prabhupada was extremely pleased and he used to go through these articles. During Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur also, Amrit Prazar Patrika was, carrying sometimes the news of the Gaudiya Math. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to weigh how best that article is based on how many times the Hare Krishna Mahamantra or the name of Krishna is mentioned in that article. So that's how both our acharyas have shown that if there is topics about pure devotees of the Lord, then it can be read. After finishing their meal, mundane people normally smoke and engage in useless talk with other godless people. It is certainly difficult for them to become followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. Reading novels is the same. Now, this is also especially devotees from the previous background who have taste for reading novels before coming to Krishna consciousness. Sometimes they cannot give up this even after coming to Krishna consciousness. So just a second, I will, the net is a little slow, so I will change the connection. Okay. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying reading novels, especially those who have come from a had taste for reading novels before coming to Krishna consciousness. Sometimes they will continue to read novels. That taste doesn't go. So it is very difficult for them to give. Especially I had this trouble. But if one gets a novel with a story like that of Puranjan in the Srimad Bhagavatam, then reading that is not an impediment, rather it is beneficial. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself composed two novels, brilliant novels. One is Prema Pradipa and second is Jaiva Dharma. And today in our ISKCON movement, Devamrit Swami Maharaj has written sort of few novels. He has explained the great escape story of Jad Bharat. And then recently one more novel has come of Devamrit Swami Maharaj. Then Satyaraj Das Adhikari. one of Prabhupada's scholarly devotees, who was a writer before coming to Krishna consciousness itself. So he has also written some of his books in the form of novel. So many other devotees, Chaitanya Prabhu's, many of his books are in the form of conversations, more in a novel format, you can say. The spiritual message is given for practical application. So that taste, what we have for reading novels, mundane novels, uh, that has to be dovetailed in reading only novels pertaining to spiritual subjects. That's how our that desire is also fulfilled. At the same time, it will lead to purification also. Otherwise, it can become an impediment, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying. Then I'm directly going to, if you have seen here, I've just discussed useless talk, not arguments, gossips, and debates, directly going to fault finding with others, because this is the most important theme for us. So, having discussed positive speech, we come to fault finding with others. Talking without reason about other people is extremely adverse to devotional service. Generally, conditioned souls, when they are talking, even in the association of devotees, suddenly the talk might go about some other devotee. Oh, that devotee, his nature is like this. Oh, he's like that. Somehow it comes up because of our mundane, of our material conditioning. So this type of talking without reason about other people, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying it is extremely adverse to devotional service. Many people talk about others to establish their own reputation, how he is better than that other person. That is the subtle reason why some people are accustomed to discuss others' character. Now, here is the real point: being envious. When we speak about others' characters, the root cause is ultimately envy. It is envy. Because of envy, we talk about others' character. That is the reason. The minds of those who are busy in such topics can never be fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. Matirne Krishne parato satova. So their mati will not become fixed in Krishna if they are engaged in these kind of talks. General talk about other devotees, like you don't like or dislike him, but just talking, oh, about his nature, he's like that. He sings in a particular tone. His tone is not so good. So these kind of talks also are not healthy in one sense. But then when we speak about others' characters, then it is because of envy. And what is the result? The mind cannot be fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. So devotees should mark these statements of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and observe themselves where in the association of devotees we are drifting from these instructions, and what is the effect we can see if we are engaged in this. Our mind cannot be fixed in Krishna. Talking about others should be rejected in all respects. It should be rejected in all respects. Fault finding arises only from imposing one's own bad habits in others. This should be given up in all respects. So finding faults, when I'll come to the second theme of this part 2 series, that how do we know that we have envy in our heart? The litmus test. That time I will be also dealing more about this fault finding. Because we find faults in others, that's when we still are not pure. So what is fault finding? The reason we see fault in others, because those faults are there within ourselves. Otherwise, we would not see faults in others. Yudhishthira Maharaj and Dhritarashtra, Duryodhan, both were sent out by the Dronacharya to find a person superior than themselves. I don't know for what reason, to go and give them that gift or something, or give the apple or the mango. And Duryodhan went and he saw everyone. He said, I found nobody superior to me, so I myself ate the mango. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, when he went, he saw everyone, sorry, not superior, inferior, maybe, I think. So Yudhishthira Maharaj saw everyone as superior, but himself as inferior, and he came back. So this is how our consciousness is. If our consciousness is pure, then we'll see everything pure. But if our consciousness is filled with some holes, like the heart or the pot filled with holes, then everything will seep out. So if our heart is filled with the tendency to find faults in others, that means the faults lie within us. So that is why it is imposing one's own bad habits on others. This should be given up in all respects. Now comes the discussion whether we can find fault with devotees. But in the practice of devotional service, there are many favorable topics that are faultless, even though they are about others. There are favorable topics that are faultless and they are about others. Who are there? What are they? Let us see. In order to completely renounce talking about others, one needs to live in the forest. Only a bhikshuk or a sannyasi. So the Avadhut Brahmana, he learned from the lady who was pounding the spices, how the bangles were making noise. So two people, when they come together, they will talk. So that's why this Avadhut sannyasi learned from this lady how to learn, so that we can renounce talking about others. There are two different types of practicing devotees. The two different types of practicing devotees are the householders and the renunciates, the grahasthas and the grahatyagis. Because the renunciates have no business whatsoever with sense enjoyment, they can give up talking about others in all respects. The sadhus have controlled their senses, mind, and intelligence. So that's why they don't have any pleasure in taking in talks of mundane or finding faults with others. But because the householder is engaged in earning, saving, protecting, and maintaining the family, he cannot completely give up talking about others. It is best for him to live in a Krishna conscious family when all one's material activities are related to with Krishna. Then even his unavoidable talk about others becomes sinless and a part of devotional practice in relation to Krishna. So somehow make the best use of the bad bargain. For the grahasthas, thought cannot be completely given up. So somehow he should live in a Krishna consciously, and all his activities he has to devote to Krishna. So then those talks about business, all that also are spiritualized, and they also become part of his devotional service. So that's a very practical instruction Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving. He should not talk about others in a way that is detrimental to anyone, that is causing injury. When that other person hears, oh, this is what he spoke about me, it will hurt him. So even in that sense, not a physical way of hurting, but even it will hurt us, hurt our sentiments. That also should not be done. He should talk about others only whatever little is necessary in his Krishna conscious family. He should not talk about others without reason. So again, second time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaking, even users mentioned this. Moreover, when a guru enlightens his disciple on some topic, unless he occasionally talks about others, his instructions may not be clear. So now we are coming to this discussion. When the guru talks about others, he talks in order to give some lessons. And that is why he might talk. He might do criticism. And this type of criticism is what is called as constructive criticism. is our point, which Bhaktin Thakur is going to start discussing now. Previous Mahajans have talked others in this way. There is merit in such talk, not fault. There is merit, and that's why they are talking about it. There is no fault in it. Now, the first example of constructive criticism comes. Sukdev Goswami begins speaking. First, he glorifies Varyante Esha Prashna. Wonderful are these questions you have asked. Atmavat Samhita. Those who are on the path of self-realization, it is fully approved. He was in ecstasy hearing the questions of Parikshit Maharaj. And immediately Sukdev Goswami criticizes the materialist in verses 2 to 4. Heavy criticism. And Sukdev Goswami is criticizing this in order to transform the heart of the materialist. One. Second, to explain Parikshit Maharaj what one should not chant, hear, and remember. So this is what is called as constructive criticism. And those souls who have pure love in their heart, who are free from envy, they are actually qualified to do this constructive criticism. The first example now we are seeing is Sukdev Goswami. So we'll go through these verses. Shodhavyadini Rajendra Nunam Santi Sahasrasha Apashyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. O king, there are thousands of topics, Santi, that can be heard. Shodhavyadini Sahasrasha, by those who do not inquire about the goal of life. Atmatattvam Apashyatam Rinam. Those who are attached to the house and commit 5 types of violence. Griheshu Grihimedinam. Prabhupada translates Grahishu Grahamedina means Grahamedis means those who are enjoying sense gratification. So these the sense gratifiers are criticized here by Sukdev Goswami. And how is their life? Nidraya Hariyate Naktam Davayena Chavada Diya Chartaya Rajan Kutamba Bhare Nava. So he is heavily coming upon them. O king, life is wasted at night. Veva riyate naktam. In sleeping or in sex enjoyment. Nidraya va vayenava. Life is wasted during the day. Diya cha, by desiring material objects. Artha iha, or supporting family members. Kutumba bharenava. So you see how Sukdev Goswami is heavily criticizing the materialist. In the night, they are spending time in sleeping, and in the daytime, they are engaged in maintaining the family. So sometimes devotees also, when they, in the beginning of their spiritual life, when they join, sometimes they also have a tendency to criticize the material. Oh, these materialists are simply engaged in sense gratification, sense enjoyment. Certainly, if you see, he is just taken up to spiritual life and he feels a threat or a fear. And as a protection, it is said, the best defense is an offense. The best defense is an offense. So that time, he criticizes the materialist. And this is done especially by neophytes. So even neophytes should avoid this kind of criticism, because this is this is born out of envy in one sense. If you see it other way, actually we should have compassion that they are caught up in materialism. Somehow I should preach and bring them to spiritual life. So the neophytes cannot accommodate, because their faith is very it is shaky, it is very, very feeble. It is only the Madhyamadhikaris who show compassion and preach. So generally, neophytes can engage in this kind of criticism, and that is not constructive. The pure devotees who engage in it, it is constructive, because their heart is free from this. Further, he criticizes Sukdev Goswami. Dehapatya kaladresho atma sainya shasatsvapi tesham pramatto nidhanam pashyan api na pashyati. deeply attached Pramatta to his body, children, and wife. Deha, Apatya, Kalatra, Adishu, who are like an army giving protection. Atma Sainyashu, though they are false. Asatsopi, he sees their destruction. Tesham Nidhanam Pashyanapi. He sees everyone is dying in his family, his grandfather, great father, but does not see. So Sukadeva Goswami is heavily criticizing the materialist, and this is what is called as constructive criticism. So this is the first example we are seeing now. Further in the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Sukadeva Goswami has answered the verses to Parikshit Maharaj, Suta is inclined. What did Parikshit Maharaj hear? We want to hear more Krishna Katha. Please speak, O Suta. And then he speaks this verse. Ayur haranti vaipumsan udyannastam chayannaso tasyarte yat shanonita uttam shloka vartaya. Varta means, news. Marathi Varta Patrika is there. Both by rising and setting, yad udyan astam cha. The sun also decreases the duration of life of everyone. Ayur haranti vaipumsan. Except one, Tasya Rite, utilizes his time, Yat Shanonita, by discussing topics of the Supreme Lord. So the materialist, with the rising and setting, their duration of life is reduced. But those, he's glorifying the devotees who are engaged in Uttama Shloka Vartaya. And after this verse, in a series of verses, in the series of verses, Suta Goswami criticizes each of the limbs of the materialist. Their ear holes are like the holes of the snake, which don't listen to the glories of the Lord. Their tongues are like the tongues of a frog, which don't chant the holy name. Their upper body is like a heavy burden, because bowing down before the Lord, which can award mukti. Their hands, though with glittering bangles, they are like dead man, which don't engage. Their eyes are like the plumes of the peacock, because they don't look at the beautiful forms of the Lord. Their legs are like tree trunks, which don't go to the holy places. So every limb, practically, Suta Goswami is heavily criticizing here. And the entire person is criticized like he's a dead body who doesn't receive the dust of the pure devotee or experiences the Tulsi. And then he comes to the heart. That heart is like steel framed, doesn't transform even after chanting the holy names. So this criticism also of Shaunaka is a constructive criticism. This is the second example. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Acharyas instruct to teach. Although Sukadeva Goswami talks about the materialist, or Suta Goswami is talking, in order to instruct his disciple, he is not considered a prajalpi. Therefore, such activities should be considered beneficial. Again, in order to instruct his own disciple, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke about pseudo renunciates in the following words from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So here is a third example how acharyas speak about others. It's in one way criticism, but to teach lessons for time to come. They give universal teachings so that these lessons can be taken up by the conditioned souls. So the whole universe is like a university. And acharyas, when they speak, they give these lessons so that everyone in this universe can learn lessons and implement in his life. So Mahaprabhu also did. Prabhu kahe vairagi kare prakriti sambhashana dekite na paran ami tahara vadan shudra jeev sabha markata vairagi kariya indriya charan bhuli prakriti sambhashiya Prabhu kahe mora vasha nahi mora man Prakriti Sambhashi Vairagi na kare darshan. Prabhu kahe, Lord Chaitanya said, Vairagi kare Prakriti Sambhashan. He is in the sannyas order of life, and he's talking to a woman. And Mahaprabhu is using a very refined word, Prakriti. This material word is also called as Prakriti because it is feminine. And he's using for a woman, which is feminine, Prakriti. Dekite na paron ami tahara vadan. I will not see him. Shudra Jeev. Shudra Jeev is what? There are many persons with little in their possession. Shudra Jeev. Markat Vairagi Kari. And they are doing Markat Vairagi. Indriya Charan Buli. They are not able to control their senses. And Prakriti Sambhashi. They are talking to a woman. Prabhu Kahe. Chaitanya says, Mora vash nahi mora van. I have no control over my mind. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking, or Krishna is speaking this in one sense. Prakriti Sambhashi Vairagi na kare darshan. I will not see such a Vairagi who speaks to a woman, na kare darshan. So very heavy statements of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to teach the renounced order of the life. So heavy criticism he does of Chota Haridas. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, my mind is not under my control. It does not like to see anyone in the renounced order who talks intimately with woman. So this is the third example we are seeing of constructive criticism. Unless one speaks in this way while instructing and while concluding a subject, there is no benefit for oneself or others. So this type of constructive criticism is done to understand and conclude a subject and to benefit oneself as well as others. And if you see in the Vaishnava Ninda series, we had seen Sat Uddesh. If there is a Sat Uddesh for the Lokahita, for oneself or for that person, then only one can speak. So this is the same point being brought out here. Therefore, when the previous acharyas personally set example and taught others, how will we be benefited by acting contrary to their instruction? So the previous acharyas have personally set this example and taught others. And if one discusses in this way, the improper behavior current in a religious sect or amongst the general public, then such talk is not adverse to devotional service. So Prabhupada sometimes very heavily spoke about his God brothers in the Gaudiya Math, what all had happened. And Prabhupada did that. One is to instruct his disciples and to give the real situation. So for the hit of his disciples, he did that. So that is why we sometimes can get bewildered seeing these statements, and we have to understand them in the right mood. Even if sometimes talks about a particular person, there is no fault. Maitreya Muni speaks about it. He speaks about a particular person, that is Maharaj Vain. Maitreya Muni, the foremost devotee, spoke about Vain Maharaj. Ittam viparaya mati papiyan utpatam gata anu niyamanastat yajan yanam na chakre brashta mangala. The great sage Maitri continued, thus the king who became unintelligent, viprayamati, due to sinful life, papinam, utpatam gata, and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the request of the great sages, which the sages put forth before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. So Maharaj Vain, directly Maitreya Muni is speaking the fault of Maharaj Vain. But this is to understand how bad qualities can be detrimental to devotional service. So from that pastime perspective, in the fourth canto, this pastime is coming of Maharaj Vain. The king is Naradeva, but he himself considers that all the demigods reside in my body. So don't worship Krishna or Vasudev, worship me. That is what is the instruction he gave to the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas became angry, and with their hunkar, they destroyed Maharaj Vain. They killed Maharaj Vain. So this narration is for us as a lesson and the pastime, and Maitreya Muni is speaking about it. Maitreya to Vidur speaks about fault of Brahma. This is interesting. Vacham duhitam tanvim swayambhur haritam mana kamam cha kame shatta sakama sakama iti na shrutam. O Vidura, we heard that lusty Brahma desired his delicate limbed daughter Vak, Swayambhur Haritamana, who had no desire. Sakama iti na shrutam. This is how Vishwanath Thakur translates. O Vidura, we have heard that Brahma daughter Vak, and who attracted his mind towards sex, although she was not sexually inclined towards him. This is how Srila Prabhupada translates. Now Maitreya is speaking to Vidura about Brahma. He is finding fault with one of the activity of Brahma. Now why is Maitreya doing this? What is the reason? Anyone would like to answer before we go into the purport and explanation? Maitreya is speaking about the fault of Brahma, that too which happened in some other kalpa. What is the reason? Anyone else also would like to try? Okay, some more detail. If anyone wants to raise their hand, try. What is the reason Maitreya is speaking the fault in Brahma of he being attracted to his daughter Vak was after him? Okay, Maya Narasimha Prabhu.
Prabhu, I think it is because he wanted to convey the power of Maya, that he was in charge of mode of passion, how he himself overcome by that.
Yes. Vishwanath Chakra Thakur gives a very nice reasoning. Let us see that. Even those who are very learned and with great power of discernment cannot control lust. Everyone who has come in this material world is bound by lust. And to give a highest example, that even Brahma can get attracted to Vak. So how much this lust is so powerful and how much a devotee should be careful. A universal lesson is explained by Maitreya to Vidura in the form of how in some previous kalpa, Brahma got attracted to Vak. Maitreya is saying, do you know about this Brahma? This is what has happened. So it's not fault finding, but to actually give lessons. This verse shows that one should not remain alone with women. Maitreya says, we have heard. So he is speaking also this fault of Brahma with lot of caution. This indicates, though this should not be spoken in order to give knowledge, I speak without fault finding, since I fear making offense. Because moment you find fault with the other person, if it is a karmi, you incur sin. If it is a Vaishnava, you will commit offense. So he is speaking, but there is no fault finding in it because it is a healthy speech and there is fear not to commit offense. He had fear that by fault finding, he would fall down in the manner of Marichi's sons. Now the Marichi's sons saw this. Brahma is, running behind his daughter. And what did they do? They found fault. Oh, Brahmaji. And they laughed. And because of that, they fell down. So this pastime is there. We know that. So just by finding faults, we fall down, in fact. And this is so subtle. This is so subtle, this fall, we don't realize it in the sadhana stage because our spiritual vision is not yet awakened. Those who are self-realized souls, above Nishta, and those who are at the stage of Bhava and Prema, they are completely free from faults and they never see faults. Nindadi shunya hridaya ipsital sangalabdva. So that is why they don't do this fault finding, because they know that if they find fault, immediately the vision comes down. But sadhakas don't realize this, and that's why they have so much, they are so imprudent, you can say, that they dare to find faults in Vaishnavas or in materialist people. So Marichi's sons saw this and they found fault and they immediately fell down. Marichi's sons laughed at Brahma when he became attracted to his own daughter. They were later born as the sons of Devaki and were killed by Kamsa. So because of this, they fell down and they were born as Devaki's sons. So this pastime we know. The phrase also indicates that this incident was not seen by anyone in the present Kalpa. Rather, it happened in a previous distant Kalpa. So some other Kalpa it has happened, yet Maitreya Muni is speaking about it for us to understand the power of lust. For us, that is the way this lesson Maitreya Muni is giving. So we, sometimes devotees have done some, sinful activity or something wrong, some 10 years back, 15 years back, and still we are finding fault with that. And Maitreya is finding fault with Brahma, which is some previous kalpa, but there is some reason, heavy reason. Since it cannot be accepted to have occurred after Brahma heard the 4 essential verses of Bhagavatam during the first day of his Brahma's life. So this incident happened in some previous kalpa where Brahma had not heard from Narayan the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. It is mentioned, Lord Narayan blesses him, follow my instructions in detail, etan matam samatishta, with extreme concentration, paramena samadhina, you will not be bewildered at any time during your lifetime and its subdivisions. Bhavan kalpa vikalpashu na vimohiti karhichet, you will not be bewildered at all. So this is the blessing Narayan gave. So definitely this had not happened in this kalpa, but in a previous kalpa. Now, Prabhupada also gives a very nice purport to this. Let us read. Balavan Indriya Gramo Vidvams Api Karshati. He quotes Sukdev Goswami from the 9th canto. It is said that the senses are so mad strong that they can bewilder even the most sensible and the learned man. Therefore, it is said that one should not indulge in living with one mother, sister, or daughter. Vidvanapi karshati. Karshati means that even the most learned also become victims of sensuous urge. So it is not for the fools, this instruction, it is for the Vidwans. If learned can, fall prey if they are living alone with one's mother or sister or daughter, then what to speak instructions for the general, even if the advanced ones also can become victims, then what to speak about it? Maitreya hesitated to state this anomaly, this fault on the part of Brahma, who was sexually inclined to his own daughter. But still he mentioned it because sometimes it so happens that the living example is Brahma himself, although he is the primeval living being and the most learned within the whole universe. If Brahma could victim of sexual urge, then what to speak of others who are prone to so many mundane frailties? So this is the logic why Maitreya is mentioning. For us to take more precautions, this extraordinary immorality on the part of Brahma was heard to have occurred in some particular kalpa. Prabhupada is following Vishnu Chakravarti, but it could not have happened in this kalpa in which Brahma heard directly from the Lord the 4 essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, because the Lord blessed Brahma after giving him lessons on Bhagavatam that he would never be bewildered in any kalpa whatsoever. So in the fifth now, Brahma, when he has heard this Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, as well as we can say the Lord had the Golok Darshan and Lord Brahma spoke Govindam Adipurusham prayers. So he is not, now bewildered. This blessing he has got. This indicates that before hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, he might have fallen victim to such sensuality. But that after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam directly from the Lord, there was no possibility of such failures. One should, however, take serious note of this incident. The human being is a social animal, and his unrestricted mixing with the fair sex leads to downfall. So Prabhupada is cautioning us in his purport. Such social freedom of man and women, especially among the younger section, is certainly a great stumbling block on the path of spiritual progress. Material bondage is due only to sexual bondage, and therefore unrestricted association of man and woman is surely a great impediment. Maitreya cited this example on the part of Brahma just to bring it to our notice, this great danger. Now, further, there are some points after we saw now these 4 examples of constructive criticism. There are some points which we will take up in the next class. Any questions, any clarification anyone has regarding what we discussed about constructive criticism today? Can they raise their hands? Any clarifications? Okay, it's almost, there's one question. Okay. Maya Narasimha Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, constructive criticism, you said neophytes sometimes to defend themselves, the best weapon is be offensive. So they quote general masses and try to, by that, how they want to safeguard their commitment in devotional service.
Correct.
So is it not healthy?
Well, in trying to do one, but you're doing the other one also, you're trying to follow one thing, but the other rule you're not able to follow. So in that sense, it's niyamagra in one sense. Once a sannyasi came to take darshan in a temple, and the rule is that, we should not offer dandavats to a sannyasi. We should offer a dandavat to sannyasi whenever we see him. But the rule is also that when the sannyasi is taking darshan or when in the front of the temple deities, we should not offer the dandavats. So one of the disciples offered dandavats, and the sannyasi blasted on him. Said, "You don't know this, that you're not supposed to offer dandavats when the altar is open." But in front of the deities, he was talking loudly and speaking this. He has the right to reprimand his disciple, but it should not be done in front of the deities also. So in order to try to follow one rule, you break the other rule. So best is educating the neophytes and giving them the right knowledge. And that's why Prabhupada mentions that one should not stay in the Kanishta stage for a long time. He should come to the Madhyam platform. So it's part of growing, and definitely we'll have to learn our lessons quickly and rise to the Madhyama platform. That's the only solution.
And also, Prabhuji, it appears that it is also responsibility of the preacher when he conveys those kind of examples to the new people. It should not be stressed so much that they are wrong, because he hears from the preacher only. That's why he repeats that kind of attitude, trying to defend himself by pointing out others' mistakes.
Yes. Very important. Yes, it is. The preacher has to present it in a very neutral way. It has to be presented in a very neutral way. Otherwise, sometimes the mood of the preacher is, he has some, conservative or liberal approach to some things. and he might express that mood, and the disciple who's hearing, they also get affected, and that can lead to, yes, many devotees have gone, I have heard about, and actually I know that they get affected by it, and they also become a little critical about such issues, which they are in their neophyte stage is not required, and that can be detrimental to their devotion. So that is why it should be taken with a lot of care and caution. The only way is that we have to educate them and elevate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions, clarifications anyone has? It's sharp 8:15. We will stop here. So a few more points are there about constructive criticism. This is a very sensitive topic, and it is important for us to understand this constructive criticism, and that's why I took it as part of the same discussion, criticism one of envy. So in the same themes, this is the last discussion we are going to have. And the next theme, which is how to know what are the symptoms of whether I'm free from envy, what is the litmus test. I'll be referring from some verses from the Gita and other sources by which we can understand. That we will start in the next week. But in the Thursday class, we will continue this constructive criticism. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Hare Krishna.